Hi everyone. I started a series on my WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram statuses around how to move away from just a head knowledge of scripture and the gospel and allow it to integrate it into our lives so that we can live a more integrated life. So if you're following me on social media, you would have been seeing those posts. And I thought, as opposed to write it out, I'm going to come and I'm going to do a video here just to explain. So this video is titled Cultivating the Fruits of the Spirit Despite Emotional Pain. So if this is your first time watching me, my name is Joanna. I am the founder of Wounds to Scars, where we work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and women who experience abuse. And we do that through conferences, retreats, and online courses. We have several groups at Wounds to Scars. If you follow us at woundstoscars.com, or any of our social media platforms, you'll get to hear about when our groups are starting again for sexual abuse, domestic abuse, and attachment injuries. So I'm going to go right into the video today. So recently someone asked me, and it was in relation to anxiety, and they said to me, they asked me something about cultivating the fruits of the Spirit. And I remember knowing of a certain that time that it's not just something that we have to literally cultivate it. And I saw then the difficulty of cultivating it when we've experienced emotional pain. I know sometimes we want to deny pain. And so we want to move right into, integrating spirituality and the religion that we have and we know we practice into our daily lives, and we're finding there's a block, and many people are getting frustrated and some are leaving God because of this. But there is a way, and we don't have to leave. So for some of us, the trauma that we experience in childhood can hinder the development of the fruits of the Spirit. It's those trauma that we experience in the early stages of biological development can leave us with trust issues versus contentment. We'll have sadness instead of peace, agitation instead of meekness, and unhealthy coping mechanisms such as overeating instead of temperance. We can have anger. Anger replaces long suffering, and self-protection takes the place of goodness and gentleness. So those are evident in these other fruits will be evident in our marriages, in our parenting, and our interpersonal relationships, and in our relationship with God. So what is the answer? I believe that God wouldn't ask us to do something that is impossible to do. He wouldn't tell us that we need to have the fruits if it was impossible to cultivate these fruits. So there is provision that is made. But by the same token, willpower alone won't do it. We can't just want to do it and bypass everything else and get to that place where we're living the fruits of the Spirit. So we have to address the root of the issues that makes us develop anger, self-protection, unhappiness, and intemperance, and the rest of them. We have to address the root issues, and many of us have experienced issues in early life that has enabled us to develop anger, trust, self-protection, agitation, frustration, as opposed to gentleness, meekness, kindness, temperance. Now this is not blame, because it's no fault of your own. I want this to be information so you can know how to change and the things that you can do to begin to replace what was there with what we should have. That will make us whole, healed, and empowered, holistic people. So find the root. You can break the cycle of self-protection with a couple things. So this is the first video. So I'm going to break down all the fruits of the Spirit throughout this week and connect them to possible childhood traumas that we could have experienced that I see that bear fruits that are opposite to the fruits of the Spirit. So we have to find the root in order to break the cycle. So let's use self-protection for example. We can break the pattern of self-protection, but we need to do a few things first. So number one, we need to acknowledge that there's a wound. There's a wound that makes me self-protect. When we're self-protecting, we struggle to emotionally connect with others. We struggle to empathize with others and their pain. We often deny our own pain. And sometimes, as I'm talking to a Christian audience, sometimes we wrap our pain in scripture and we deny our pain, and so we deny the pain of others. And that is even extended to not being able to acknowledge when we hurt someone. And so somebody might point out a hurt and you will use a scripture to back up your actions, and you're not able to apologize. And sometimes even the apology is not an apology because it will be shifted and blame. And that is when we're self-protecting. And we do that for a number of reasons. I'm not going to go into that just yet. But first, I was saying, how can we find the root? First, acknowledge that there's a wound. Know what you're protecting yourself from. And the acknowledgement of the wound will help you to do that. Know how the wound affects you and others. And also, people who self-protect, as I said earlier, will struggle to apologize. Their thoughts will be, this person is blaming me. I am at fault. They're out to get me. They don't like me. And even though that might be not a cognitive process, you will feel so overwhelmingly anxious or fearful that the first thing will, because it's triggering. Remember I said, when that trauma happened in the early stages of life, events that have emotional connection get stores in the brain. And so all of those events, and when they're not processed early in life, when we don't have caregivers that were sensitive to our needs, we develop ways of protecting self. And so though you grew chronologically, those things will not have grown. They would still be the same. So when anything happens as you're an adult now, the first thing to do is the brain will trigger that memory, that pathway, and send you feeling the same way you did when you were a child, when your needs was not taken care of. And so the overriding thing is going to be protect self, protect self, protect self. There's an alarm that's going off to protect yourself. And so you do, but when we do that, we hurt ourselves, we hurt others, and our relationships are not as safe and fulfilling as we'd like them to be. And you'll find that a lot of people will leave. And you might be wondering, why are people leaving? And if you're somebody who has had to leave a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship in terms of a marriage, a child that is struggling to connect with a parent, and you've decided that this is it, you're giving up, I hope this will serve as some background. It doesn't mean that you stay and continue to get hurt, but this will serve as some background and an understanding of what might be going on for them. So when you're faced with that, know that the issue isn't the person, it's the historical wound that happened in childhood. And sometimes this is stacking from a lack of secure attachment. Secure attachment, we were created for connection. And when that connection didn't happen early in life, we naturally want to self-protect. We go through different stages, and I will perhaps go through this at another time, the different attachment styles that we developed. But let's just say for the sake of this video, that we develop insecure attachment when we've been abandoned or rejected. And when I say abandoned, it doesn't mean that parents leave all the time, but we're abandoned emotionally. So parents and caregivers can be in our home, they can provide all the things, but they were not responsive to our needs, they were not sensitive to our feelings. And so for a child, that will leave you feeling abandoned. Now, as an adult, you might be thinking, what? Why would you be abandoned? Tell that to the child. A child will experience this as that. And it's important when you're acknowledging the wound to acknowledge all of your experiences and put them in context, because these are some of the things that is preventing you from living and developing and experiencing with others the fruits of the Spirit. So when we're in this place, there's a lot of internalized shame and internalized, though you may know scripture, there's a struggle with shame and guilt. There's a lot of sense of, I am not good enough. If I was good enough, they wouldn't leave, a child will think. If I was good enough, I'll be cared for and nurtured and protected. And those are the thoughts. So they're unaware of how to allow the knowledge of the things that they know to chip away at the pain. And we often don't know how to let the knowledge that we have chip away at the pain, because we're not thinking like that, you know, and we weren't trained to think like that. So the verse that says in scripture that he that the Spirit set free is free indeed is not being experienced. And what some people will rush to do is to forgive. If I forgive my parents, if I forgive my caregivers, then I'm going to be okay. And you'll often find that that doesn't fix it, because forgiveness in this instance wouldn't fix connection or wouldn't heal attachment injuries. To begin the work of knowing self so that you can know God, so that he can know, well, he knows you, but for know yourself so that you can extend yourself and open all of you to God, because sometimes we try to hide parts of ourselves from him, and so that others can fully get to know us too, and we can experience the gentleness of God that is found in Isaiah 41 verse 10, when it talks about how he leads the lamb and holds them in his bosom. And we can only really fully fall into that when we've when we've experienced that security that comes from him. So those people who haven't experienced tenderness and care through though they were raised in homes with parents and caregivers will not be able to understand this verse. So however, there was an insensitivity, as I said, to feelings and needs, and there was a distance, an emotional distance that created a wound, and that wound needs healing. So what we learn early in life when that happens is that people can't be trusted. People can't be trusted. And because people can't be trusted, we have to protect ourselves from people. So that's where that self-protection was developed. That's also the experience that teach worth and worthiness. And the narrative for the child, then the dialogue that child develops, is that narrative developed in childhood is taken into adulthood. I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy. There's a lot of shame and guilt and fear. And so we have to protect self from that wound, okay? Or protect ourselves from others, we're thinking. That I am unworthy of love and no one loves and wants me. So you can imagine, therefore, when any challenges arise, anything arise that might look like you're going to be rejected, what people normally do is attack first. And you attack by blaming, by not taking responsibility, by not apologizing, by ignoring something that's been expressed to you as a wound that was created out of an action by yourself, and that can cause pain. And so the pain means I need to protect myself. So without healing the original wound, the fruit of meekness might show outwardly, but the wound will still be there. So the people who are close to you, your husband, your wife, the person you're dating, your children, your close friends, they are the ones that will experience the wound, that will feel the real impact of the wound. The people who are from a distance, the people who you attend church with, they won't see the wound, because the wound can be dressed up. Self-protection, shame, fear, guilt, lack of attachment and connection can be dressed up in clothes, hairstyle, hats, spirituality that looks really good on the outside, and people from afar might see it and it might look a certain way, but when you come close, those are the people that gets hurt by that wound. So what can be done? Attachment injuries can heal. I have a group called Storm Chaser, built out of my devotional called Storm Chaser, which is based on the book of Isaiah, developing connection, rebuilding trust, and healing emotional brokenness through the book of Isaiah, where we are dealing with healing attachment injuries, because I believe they can heal. We were created to heal. Psalms 27 verse 10 says, when your father and your mother forsake you, then the Lord will take care of you. It might be difficult to trust and to believe that he will, when early caregivers didn't. But to begin the work of healing, we have to heal that wound in order to fully settle into the fact that he will take care of you, so that you can fully experience the promise of care from God and experience the strength and the comfort that he wants to give. In order to do that, attachment wounds have to heal. And if they don't, you're going to live perhaps a facade of religion and spirituality, and you're going to struggle to see how the Bible, how the words that you read in can be integrated into your life. If you are in this position and there is a void and a deficit, and you don't know how to fill it. You're doing all the things. You're serving, you're teaching, you're leading, but there's a deficit. I want you to know that you don't have to be afraid, that you don't have to be afraid of that wound, that it can heal, that you can learn, that you can change, that you can grow through it. Find someone who is able, who has the skills and the knowledge to heal attachment injuries, so you can be free and you can start cultivating and developing the fruits of the Spirit. Because we can't cognitively make our way, make ourselves do it. Willpower is not strong enough to make us day by day demonstrate meekness and kindness and gentleness and temperance and self-control when there's a wound that is there, that is unhealed. And doing this work for as many years as I've done this work, I see God so integrated into the work of healing. He wants you to be free because he knows that you're missing out, and this deep connection with him and with others, because you're not allowing yourself to fully come into and knowing who you are, so you can let others know you too. So that's the first part series of cultivating the fruits of the Spirit, and we're going to look at how to cultivate self-control when we've experienced things like sexual trauma that leads us to use sex as a coping mechanism. And there's no condemnation here. It's just information and knowledge, because we're on a path to healing. Healing isn't neat. Healing can be messy, but healing is possible. And that's what we're about at Wounds to Scars. Turning those wounds into scars that no longer hurts, because we know he was wounded for our transgressions and bruised for our iniquities. And we know by his stripes we're healed. Have an awesome day.